Hello, everybody, and welcome to Make Anime Great Again, a retrospective on trends in anime quality. I'm Max.
I'm Clayton.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Sam.
And together we are the foundation for the preservation of Gen 1 Pokemon. You can follow us on Twitter at 5th Gen Not PKMN. So hello, KinYoobiCon. It's great to see all of you. I mean, I can't see you because we're operating through a computer screen, but I'm happy you're participating in this con. And I guess we should talk about anime, right, guys?
Nah.
Let's talk about video games.
Okay, so video games or anime. Anime, as most of you know, is what we're all here for. And the problem is, as anime fans, a lot of us don't really know about the history of anime. And in order to talk about anime greatness, and when anime was great, why it's bad now, we do have to go over the history of it. And like all things, we have to go to the cultural progenitor of everything, which is, of course, America. Now, I know what you're saying, but Max, anime is a Japanese thing. You're wrong. Like, of course you're wrong. It's American. This is because Astro Boy, which is widely credited to be the first anime, the creator of that, Osamu Tezuka, actually credits much of his creative process to the Carl Barks Scrooge McDuck comics, which, in fact, this is a Christmas card sent by Osamu Tezuka to Carl Barks, congratulating him on all of his vast wealth. And these Christmas cards are automated to continue sending from Osamu Tezuka's estate to Carl Barks' estate until the end of time. But because Osamu Tezuka credits most of his creative process for Astro Boy to the Scrooge McDuck comics, that does mean that Astro Boy is just a spin-off of Scrooge McDuck, therefore Scrooge McDuck is the first anime. If you, for some reason, decide to define the first anime as the first animated serialized cartoon, that is also still not Astro Boy. In fact, the first serialized animated show was Crusader Rabbit, which, little known fact about Crusader Rabbit, is based on the Crusades. And little known fact about Crusades, the first emperor of Byzantium was Scrooge McDuck. Now, this means that the Roman Empire is anime, the Byzantium Empire is anime, America, of course, is anime. The Crusades are anime, Astro Boy is anime, and Crusader Rabbit is anime. Really, Astro Boy is just kind of a different iteration of anime instead of basing it on, countless centuries of blood and conflict. They just based it on robots built in Greece or whatever. But while we don't know about that here in America, this is widely known in Japan. In fact, almost every manga artist does credit Carl Barks to some degree in their work. Have you ever wondered why Super Saiyan here is golden yellow? That is, of course, to pay homage to Scrooge McDuck's vast wealth.
All right, but now that you know that the true origins of anime and aren't being influenced by the propaganda you've been fed your whole life, we're going to talk about some of these original anime, or what you thought they were. Like the first one being Astro Boy. Again, it took everything from other properties. First of all, it was inspired by Scrooge McDuck. They stole the whole concept of the story from Rocketeer, and then the character was even just Mega Man, but he could fly. Because that would make those levels way too trivial to actually beat. The second one I want to talk about is Gigantor. It was a really big one because when it came back to the West, it was done so in English. They dubbed it in English. They did change the setting so it no longer took place in 1950s Japan. It was now 21st century America. You just have to ignore the background. So this was steps forward in making this great. The one downside was it was also not original. It came out in 1964, which we know is well after the 1999 release of The Iron Giant. They borrowed almost everything from it, except for Vin Diesel. They couldn't afford him. He was expensive back then. Next up, we have Kimba the White Lion. If you're saying you've seen this before, you're right. Only they changed the colors of the animals just a little bit so that they weren't accused of cheating on each other's homework. And then next up, we have my personal favorite, Speed Racer. Again, it broke a lot of records when it came out, including the record for fastest land speed talking when you're not sitting on a toilet. But again, it really wasn't original. It just did everything that Walt Disney World's Magical Racing Tour had already done, just in a 2D form.
The ancient era of anime is also where the shonen genre got its first introduction in the form of Scooby-Doo. Now, I know what you're wondering. Clayton, how the hell is Scooby-Doo an anime, more or less a shonen, and how does it have anything to do with the progenesis of the most influential anime of the 90s, which is, of course, Dragon Ball GT? To which I have to say, you clearly didn't watch the Scooby-Doo Jackie Chan Adventures crossover episode, in which Shendu achieved Super Saiyan 4, was on the verge of utterly conquering the universe, were it not for the timely intervention of our hero Jackie Chan. Except he couldn't actually save the universe, because in order to do so, he would have had to power up to full strength, which would have literally torn a hole in the fabric of reality. Which is why Jackie Chan had to tag in his BFF, Ultra Instinct Shaggy, who made short work of that weird Dragon Man, not Trogdor thing, saved the universe, and ushered in the era of shonen. In fact, to pay homage to the great cultural influence of Shaggy, the internet put together a strong petition drive to get him included in Mortal Kombat 11 as a DLC character, which unfortunately didn't actually pass. But that's okay, because it's not that Shaggy didn't get included in any fighting game. He was included in the best fighting game, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And with the ancient era out of the way, we need to start transitioning into the golden era. But before we actually talk about the influential anime of the golden era, we need to talk about anime providers. Which may seem like a strange thing to talk about, especially for you Zoomers who... Now, this might sound like a weird concept, right? But back in the day, you couldn't just watch whatever you wanted to watch whenever you wanted to watch it just by flipping to the right website and just clicking go, right? You had to make sure that your TV guide was there. You know, your TV guide printed on actual paper, a substance utterly unknown to your generation. You had to look up what channel your show was going to be on, at what time it was going to be on. You couldn't pause it. It was just going, right? You had to be in your chair. You had to watch it, or you, at the bare minimum, had to program a magnetic tape cassette in order to record it. So, you know, it's a fantastic thing, right, that we had Toonami. Toonami was a magical programming block which came at just the right time. You know, it came in, you know, right after school. You could do a little bit of your homework, or you could do what I did and procrastinate on your homework before you started watching all of the classics. We're talking Dragon Ball Z. We're talking Sailor Moon, Outlaw Star, ZOIDS, Powerpuff Girls, you name it, they had it. Also, Toonami had a really sweet robot mascot, or I guess 4 versions of the same sweet robot mascot, which made everything better. And so suffice to say, without Toonami, there would be no anime today. That's because Toonami was my personal gateway into anime, and since I know that my personal experience is reflective of the experience of literally every other human being on the planet, that's how we know. Toonami, it was anime. Toonami made anime.
Next, we have Funimation, the actual gateway into anime for America. Now, some of you may have heard of 4Kids through these Zoomer dank memes. However, 4Kids is really the progenitor of anime, of bringing it back to America, important in the American reclamation. And they had to change some things because Japan is weird and we live in America. For example, they had to change these rice balls into jelly donuts because in America, rice is what Santa gives you when you've been a bad kid this year. And if I'm 5 years old and I'm watching this show, I'm going to be having PTSD flashbacks to that one time that Santa gave me rice instead of the Thomas the Tank Engine train set that I wanted. Okay, so Drock has to come in and remind me, these are not rice balls. These are jelly donuts so that I can have a good Sunday morning cartoon. Okay, another great example is where they replace this rice ball with a American 5-meat sub whose 11 herbs and spices have somehow improved the image quality. They also had to remove references to death because children... they had to replace the lollipops with cigarettes because lollipops are garbage candy that your dentist gives out. And cigarettes are something you get from your cool uncle. This panel brought to you by Spirit. And then they had to remove references to death because cartoons are for children and we're not comfortable with things like death. So they had to replace it with the Shadow Realm or Hiffle or HE double hockey sticks. And of course, they had to remove the guns from ET because this is America and we don't like guns here.
Next up, we of course have to talk about Funimation, which is probably, oh God, can we get the real Funimation logo on here, please? Thank you. God, all this newfangled Zoomer nonsense drives me up a wall. Anyway, Funimation, while Toonami was the programming block through which all of the classics were aired, Funimation was the company that dubbed all the classics. They dubbed Dragon Ball Z, they dubbed Outlaw Star, they dubbed Sailor Moon, they dubbed the Powerpuff Girls. If it was anime in the 90s and it was in English, Funimation probably had a hand in it. So together with Toonami, they defined anime culture for a generation to come. Not only that, their influence on culture extends to the invention of the meme with the over 9,000 reference. Now, you know, this may be confusing also because back in the day, we didn't have memes. The best thing we had were knock-knock jokes. It was a dark time, you know. It was a relief when all of a sudden various neckbeards and trolls on 4chan started using over 9,000 to respond to literally anything that was mildly surprising, to the point where, you know, similarly to Pickle Rick, it was funny initially before it was overused to the point of never being funny again. But this, you know, spawned an entire plethora of the ancient memes, right? Numa Numa, Rick Rolling, Leak Spin, Caramel Donson, you name it. Funimation came first, and over 9,000 was the beginning. So thank you to Funimation. Also, I would like to pay homage to the strong moral stance Funimation took by breaking up with Crunchyroll. By pulling out of Verve, giving up some sweet ad revenue in protest of their position on the assassination of Harambe, which is to say, Crunchyroll was strongly in favor of the assassination of Harambe, which is just morally indefensible. So props to Funimation for their strong moral stance. Not so props to Funimation for maintaining a online service which doesn't work and features exclusively bad anime.
All right, now that we've told you about these anime providers, we're going to get into the real anime of the golden age. Yes, the 90s, when anime was so powerful it destroyed worlds as well as changed genres.
Our first anime that changed the world is Inuyasha, the true story of how Lassie fell in a well, went all the way back to the year 10,000 BC, and met his best friend and life partner, Lassie. Now, this story was so influential that it created the very idea of owning dogs. Without it, you wouldn't have your doges, your puppers, or even your good boys. All right, and this story was so important that rather than giving it a movie, they instead gave it a 280-episode documentary series directed by Michael Bay. Now, Michael Bay didn't think the story was exciting enough, so he had some artistic reinterpretation of the characters. This unfortunately had the side effect of spawning the very idea of a cat girl and really seeded that, but don't worry, we have a plan to deal with that.
And the next up on our list of anime that changed the world is, of course, the one, the only, Cowboy Bebop. This anime brought around massive changes in the world that just revolutionized our modern age. It brought around visual animation that had never been seen before. So when the FBI and the CIA saw the animation that was in this, they thought, hey, We don't even have to fake a moon landing. Or we don't actually have to go to the moon to make Russia look bad. We can just use this animation to fake it. I mean, we can just hire like 10 Japanese people and just now all of a sudden it looks like we're on the moon. Look at these images. They are identical. The Russians can't tell them apart. I can't tell them apart. Therefore, they must be the same, and the moon landing was just anime.
Now, as influential as Cowboy Bebop and Inuyasha are, I think we're really missing out here on My Bay, which is, of course, Beyblade. Now, I know a lot of you remember Beyblade as those low-quality tops you could spin as, like, a battle toy. But that's just a modern interpretation of something that has carved our history like the Colorado River has carved the Grand Canyon. In fact, I wouldn't be shocked if Beyblade did carve the Grand Canyon. I mean, have you seen what they can do to water? You remember what Moses said. Pharaoh, let my people go and let it rip. To the signing of the Declaration of Independence. For those of you who didn't know, John Hancock was in fact a sentient Beyblade. And sometimes they like playing pranks, you know, when we had that Beyblade that lived a Benjamin Button-style life and started a band called Franz Ferdinand, sang a song called Take Me Out, then decided he was bored and just recreated it, start World War I for giggles. But in addition to that, Beyblades also invented the concept of sports. Before Beyblades existed, the only sport people engaged in was see how many times you can get gored by a woolly rhino and still live. And the high score was like 2. No one was particularly good at it. But then Beyblades came out, and suddenly people were building these large Roman Colosseums to battle tops. You thought those were for feeding Christians to lions in gladiatorial combat? That's crazy. You can't corner anyone in a circle. Circles are for Beyblades. And there's so many other influential 90s anime that we don't really have the time to go over. From ZOIDS Chaotic Century, to ZOIDS New Century, ZOIDS Trigun Century, the Blatant Sesame Street ripoff, ZOIDS Pokemon Century, and of course we can all remember the most gruesome of them all, ZOIDS Hamtaro Century. I don't know about you, but I can still hear Laura's screams when I sleep.
As deep as the PTSD I still experience from Zoid's Hamtaro Century still is to this day, it doesn't hold a candle to the cultural influence that the greatest anime from the greatest era had on the medium. We're talking about an anime starring Toru. Not that Toru, the other Toru. Thank you. This is not only starring Toru, this is an anime that created an entire academic discipline known as archaeology. And not only invented archaeology, but also invented this mere concept of an artifact, which is kind of strange considering the artifacts themselves clearly existed for long before this anime came out. But, you know, we just didn't know what to call them. So thank God for this anime, which was also Ganondorf's breakout anime role, where he is shown here dressed up as a suave airship casino blackjack dealer, you know, flipping out 21s like candy. Yes, I'm talking about Jackie Chan Adventures, an anime starring famous Japanese martial artist Jackie Chan, who goes around defeating the forces of darkness, uncovering ancient artifacts, doing some sweet kick flips, teaching great moral lessons to the kids, and also Spanish lessons. In fact, to pay homage to Jackie Chan Adventures and the deep influence it has on society to this day, we are here to announce for you at KinYoobiCon the Jackie Chan Adventures anime revival in official collaboration with Crunchyroll. That's right, we're making it happen. Go to the Kickstarter and give us some money, which we're going to need a lot of, because as you can see, we're asking for $100 million for the trailer of the pilot episode. But, you know, you can't put a price tag on good art, right? We could hire some cheap Japanese studio to do everything for a fraction of the cost, or we could hire Tom Hanks to draw the whole thing by hand and crayon. And as I'm sure you all know, if you're good at one type of art, it logically follows that you must be good at all types of art. So the logic is sound. Beyond financial troubles, the other thing we need to get over is the fact that Crunchyroll is currently suing us, telling us to stop claiming we're collaborating with them, which is just pure nonsense. That has to be some sort of troll, just like that Twitter hack the other week. You know, there's something going on higher up. We'll get it resolved shortly.
Yeah, so if we just take a look back at all of those animes we just talked about, they all changed the world, and they're all from the 90s. But what else did they have in common? The answer is they all made use of the 7 samurai of anime. 7 figurative samurai that pulled throughout the most influential concepts that could be used in anime, past, present, and future. Without these samurai protecting the industry and driving it forward, the entire anime industry would have been cut down, just like those farmers.
The first of the 7 samurai we have to talk about is, of course, the concept of love triangles. Now, it's common for a story to have man finds woman, man and woman bond over double frappe cappuccino they get at Starbucks, man and woman marry at said Starbucks. But the concept of having multiple people competing over the affection of a single love interest, that was new to Shounen. It was, of course, invented by Ranma 1/2 in the godfathered in late 80s, so therefore early 90s. But it was really perfected by the 2003 live action film The Room, which, as we all know, is one of the greatest animated 90s shows of all time, wherein Tommy Wiseau played Johnny, a hardworking everyman who was just days away from getting his promotion and then was about to marry the love of his life, Lisa. Unfortunately, his best friend Mark showed up and was also interested in Lisa, and Lisa was interested in him, and then there was this whole kerfuffle between Johnny and Mark competing for Lisa's affections, and really Lisa sucks, and that's what's important. I hate you, Lisa. Johnny deserved better.
Speaking of useless friends, we have the useless sidekick, who's really just there to make the protagonist look good by comparison. In an action show, they'll probably job for the bad guy. You know, the guy who always needs the sensorbine. The guy who gets blown up by one Cyberman, the equivalent of a Raditz, which is itself the intergalactic metric for mediocrity. You know what, Yamcha? How about next time you want to show off your wolf fang fist on the bad guy and die, instead of coming back when your so-called friends try to bring you back with the Dragon Balls? Out of pity, I assure you, you just pull a Goku and check out, say, nah, I'm good, stay dead, because nobody needs you. Who am I supposed to be talking about? Ryoga? He's a disgusting pig.
All right, our next one is giant robots. The giant robots are ubiquitous to anime. Even ancient Japan had them built out of castles. I mean, what is there to say? Giant robots are the embodiment of power, technology, and beauty all in one. Now we just need a giant robot Waluigi, and I can die happy. But if you don't believe me, they made an entire show dedicated to giant robots. And in this show, they proved that in a single giant robot, you could have every single button imaginable, and it would be good for every situation. I mean, how would you have the foresight to install all of these buttons on a single robot? I wouldn't. I would have probably left it at 6. But no, I gotta press this button. I gotta know what it does, and all those other buttons. I am, of course, talking about Megas, which was the perfect example and a love letter to giant robots.
Next up, we've got the magical transformation, exemplified here by perhaps the most well-known instance of this, Goku's ascendance to the Super Saiyan form during the Namek saga of Dragon Ball Z. The magical transformation is a versatile trope that is utilized in a variety of situations. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be the protagonist, although sometimes it is, such as when the protagonist runs into a difficult challenge featuring a great evil that must be overcome for the sake of humanity, but their base form just doesn't cut the mustard. It could also be, say, you're Akira Toriyama. You've been drawing the bad guy the same way for the past 50 chapters. You're sick of it, and you want to try out a new artistic style. Yeah, sure, you might get sued, but hey, it lets you spice things up a bit. You can excuse it as a power-up for the villain, and everything's great. Or maybe you're a media company, and you decide, you know what's better than selling one plush toy of the same character? Selling 2 plush toys of the same character. You get 2 plush toys, they get 2 plush toys worth of money, and then we get Magikarp. We get the Magikarp power page on TV tropes. Everybody's happy, absolutely no downside, except for your mom's wallet, but, you know, what are you going to do?
I mean, but that's only if your mom's even there. Another big thing in 90s anime was, of course, parental abandonment. Because, I don't know, for some reason you just couldn't have a character without not having parents. Like, they'd detract from the storytelling. I don't get it. It's weird. But there are a lot of different forms of parental abandonment that were utilized in 90s anime. From the kind of emotionally unavailable alcoholic mothers to the parents who just say, screw it, let's go to Costa Rica and abandon our kid with his grandparents while we try to find hidden treasure, because that's way cooler. To the, I don't know, living in Neo-Tokyo and having your dad call you up, even though it's an estranged relationship, and your dad's like, hey, son, I need you to come here, and oh yeah, here's this girl that may or may not be a clone of your mother, and I want you to become friends with her, and I also have this giant robot that has the soul of your mother inside of it, and I want you to go inside of that and operate it, and when it feels pain, you feel pain, and this will only work because for some reason I've decided the only way to make giant robots is to infuse the soul of your mother into them. I don't know. Normal parental relationships.
Next, we have the most powerful samurai tournament arcs. You know, the punching. I don't know about you guys, but I don't see how a character can go through a journey without battling their way through a bracket of sequentially more powerful and more interesting foes. As you know it today, a character arc, or as it used to be called, a character bracket, until some loser lib arts major who didn't prepare for his thesis had to steal the whole concept to write it overnight, and he just changed a couple elements and changed the shape and hope he wouldn't be noticed. And of course it worked because academia. Okay, anyway, our leading anime for this is Yu Yu Hakusho. In the red you can see the parts of the story that do not contain a tournament arc, and in the green you can see the parts of the story that do. And Yu Yu Hakusho is a good show. Tournament arcs are good. Most of the show is a tournament arc. Therefore, I confirm that tournament arcs are great.
And our 7th samurai is, of course, literal samurai. Because what's more representative of figurative samurai than literal samurai? Just not that one. Because, yeah, cool guys with a sword. You know. And then they're the fighters with unbreakable wills. And the 3rd level, you get advantage on all attacks for a turn and bonus HP. And then at 7th level, you get a big bonus to your charisma checks based on your wisdom score. But as any power gamer, you should be dumping wisdom, so that matters quite a bit less.
And in a bit of false advertising, we have the 8th of the 7 samurai, Lo-Fi Cowboy Bebop to study and relax. Let's say you've just finished your shift at the Jamba Juice cart in your local Safeway. You're thinking, I've put in my 2 hours for the week. That's all I can do to benefit society for the month. You know, I think I deserve a well-earned break. So you head home, you flop down on the couch, pour yourself a cold beverage, click on some tunes, click on an episode of the classics, and just chill.
So, you'd think with these 8 samurai that they would have protected the anime industry going out of the 90s and into the 2000s. That would have been the case, but unfortunately they all forgot to turn off their computers, and they just got sucked into the Y2K vortex. It was very unfortunate, and that leads us into the 2000s.
Now, the problem with anime in the 2000s is people decided that there were more things they could do with anime than make shonen. That's a problem, because, you know, like, music was perfect in the late 60s, early 70s, because the only genre was rock and roll. And as long as people just only made rock and roll, music was going to stay great, and anime would stay great. However, there was someone, I don't know, The Clash or someone went, hey, what if we did punk rock and, like, did this new thing where we take existing elements from the, like, good genre of music and spun it off and made it really bad. And basically what I'm saying is the 2000s is just a somehow worse version of punk rock in comparison to the late 60s, early 70s baller blues rock that was Fleetwood Mac and Led Zeppelin.
The first bad 2000s trend is harem anime, which took the solid foundation Ranma in half and said, hey, let's remove the best part of the show, the fighting, and also the second best part of the show, the comedy. And what you're left with is one guy with like 5 girls that inexplicably hang around him and they don't really do anything. It's like, this is entirely unrealistic, okay? When have you had 1 girl interested in you, let alone 5? Okay, what's more realistic is this. Girls, you've all been there. They were just far less attractive.
And our next 2000s mistake was, of course, the Slice of Life spinoff. I mean, by watching this panel right now, you are more interesting than you're being more interesting than a Slice of Life anime. Just let's look at the Wikipedia definition. Often lacks plot development, conflict, and exposition, and having an open ending. So what is there even a point to these shows? And the answer is no, there isn't. I mean, what if you're screaming like, oh, but Best Girl? I mean, but then just go buy a coloring book and rip out anyone who's not Best Girl. But there's just no reason for the genre. It has no point. It's less boring than real life, and that's not what anime is about.
Moving on to a genre that's less boring, but perhaps more disappointing, we've got non-shonen shonen. To explain, the early 2000s were a time of experimentation, right? Shonen had really been hitting its stride. Everyone knew that punching equals good anime, but they wanted to spice up the formula a little bit. So they tried, controversially, implementing shonen that did not involve punching. A great example of this being Death Note right here, which is an anime that, except for one glorious episode where it did feature punching, featured basically just psychological thriller elements and cerebral nonsense rather than physical violence. And the result is, not great. Like right here, let's look at Yu Yu Hakusho, for example. We got the antagonist with the glowy fist. We got a Drider coming down from the sky, action lines, and then pow! Right in the abdomen. We got it flying backwards. There's a clear conflict. There's suspense, because who knows if they'll be able to overcome this obstacle. And then there's a clean resolution, and it looks awesome. Contrast this with a typical action scene from Death Note. I mean, there's some of the elements here, right? It's really fast paced. There's some action lines. There's particle effects. He's really intense. There's probably some music playing that really drums it up, but he's doing homework. Doing homework isn't what you watch anime to do. Doing homework is what you watch anime to avoid doing. So why on earth would anyone watch this? Death Note, garbage tier anime, do not recommend. Don't use it to recommend to all your friends who haven't seen anime before. I see it recommended too often. Tell them to watch something good like Dragon Ball GT instead. Next up, we've got Yu-Gi-Oh! Right? Which, again, except for one glorious episode, didn't involve punching. The protagonists would enter conflict. Like, the characters would have conflicts, but these conflicts were resolved exclusively through the use of children's card games. Which, that's not okay. It's the same problem as Death Note, where you're using paper to resolve all your problems instead of punching. And this is one of the rare circumstances in which 2 words that start with the same letter do not, in fact, have literally identical functions. So it's just not okay. Don't do this. Now, and it's not just paper, right? There are other not shonen that do this. We've got Project Runway, for instance. We've got, I don't even know what this one is. I assume, judging by the fact that it's that somebody with an emo hairstyle is holding a pen, that it's some sort of bad Death Note knockoff, but heck if I know. And then last but not least, we have an anime that I hear everyone is getting into right now, which is, of course, One Punch Man, which, as the name strongly suggests, does not feature enough punching.
So, circling back to cerebral nonsense, I think we have to talk about the final troubling trend of anime in the 2000s, which is, of course, Miyazakification, wherein people suddenly decided, well, we've got this great thing where we're telling stories with fights, but what if we told real human stories with developed characters? It's like, no, you're not developing characters. This is how you develop characters, through a bracket. We went over that. No, you're trying to tell us some weird cerebral stuff that no one understands. What is Serial Experiments Lane even about? I tried watching it. 3 minutes in, there was no announcer, so I was out. We get stuff like Paranoia Agent, which, sure, it had some, like, cool baseball fight scenes, but quickly devolved into this whole idea of just a general zeitgeist being able to dictate reality. And that's not what I watch anime for. If I wanted complex emotional storytelling, I'd watch Big Bang Theory. No. We get stuff like Mononoke. Like, come on, man. You're so lazy. First of all, that art's terrible. I don't know what you're going on with there. Second of all, like, you literally just took the title of a Miyazaki film and cut the first half off and named the show Mononoke and went, well, you know, instead of having a fighting arc, what if we just had an entire, like, story arc about a woman dealing with the trauma of a miscarriage? That's not compelling. So the 2000s were a disappointment, which is frustrating because they started with such promise. Now, entering the new millennium, Goku set his 3 children, Monkey D. Luffy, Orange Hair Kid, and Boruto's dad, off into the world to spread shonen greatness far and wide. And unfortunately, they hung out with Gohan and Goku's back alley and drank beer for the next 2 decades. So it's time to talk about the disappointment that was the Big 3. And the first of the Big 3 we have to talk about is the one, the only, brought to you by Clorox. We have Bleach. Now, Bleach is bad. It's really bad. Here is a list of all of the story arcs from Bleach. Now, people complain about filler, which is fair. However, this is what most people believe the filler in Bleach is. Those people are wrong. Bleach has a lot more filler than that. Everything in orange is filler. Yeah, that's right. Everything after episode 21, after episode 20 is filler. That's because Bleach tried to bring back a lot of the classic 70s tropes that made anime great. Namely, Bleach was initially made as a spin-off to Scooby-Doo. However, after 20 episodes of, you know, going around fighting fake ghosts and finding out Mr. Jenkins did it, they decided to go into this, like, weird Soul Society arc, and then, like, they had Bounce and Quincy's, and I don't really know after that, because I stopped after episode 120, when, I don't know, I realized that at 17, Bleach was trash. But they never circled back to the core concept, which was, who is haunting the house down the street? No, they decided to make hollows real and pull a whole Scooby-Doo and the 13th Ghost situation. And the point of Scooby-Doo is the ghosts aren't real. Why do you keep trying to make the ghosts real? The other 70s trope they leaned on too heavily, which was, of course, ripping it off of Disney films. Now, the problem is Lion King 1, which, as we all know, is the greatest film of the 70s Disney Renaissance, was already ripped off by Kimba and the White Lion, so they had to pull something else. So they pulled a Lion King 2, but instead of basing it off of Romeo and Juliet, they tried to do the modern take, and Bleach was instead based on Romeo plus Juliet, which I think we can all agree is a giant war crime. And finally, and most frustrating, they took swords and somehow made them uncool by giving them mega evolutions. Like, what's going on here? Why are you taking our swords to Hot Topic? They're swords. They're intrinsically cool. And all of this is really how we can look at Bleach and go, oh, that makes sense that nobody read it anymore. In fact, if you look at Bleach's charts, Kubo, the creator of Bleach, wasn't actually, when they informed him of the cancellation of the show, they instead sat him in a room and went, okay, here's the deal. We have to end Bleach. It's not doing well. Here's the amount of time you get. You've got some paper, you've got a pencil, you've got some ink. You have to draw the ending to Bleach, and the moment you need food, water, or sleep, it's over, no questions asked. And that's how Bleach ended, and that's why we never got to circle back and see what happened to Scrappy-Doo.
Next, we have Naruto, which started with so much promise that you could believe it, and then promptly failed. Now, so where did Naruto go? First is with the characters. They had their Goku-type character, and instead of making him an accidental pervert, we'll make him an actual pervert. And then we'll take our respectable level 7 Karen and turn her right into level 11. Crank that up. And then they took Krillin and said, hey, go shop at Hot Topic. So the characters were kind of bad. Second thing was that they had this rich ninja lore to draw from. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Ninja Scroll, Batman. But then they got bored of that and bored of ninjas halfway through writing the first episode and turned it into a Harry Potter fan fiction where instead of wands, they do stuff with their hands. And the problem with that Naruto is that you're a ninja and ninjas throw shurikens with their hands. Okay, and then they like started turning him into summoners later in the game, and it's just like you're not a summoner, you're a ninja. Use a sword or something. Okay, and after that they kind of had to reinvent the series, continue it, and to do that they had to draw ideas from all over anime. So they created the most hot topic version of a magical girl transformation they could. They started taking in like huge energy blasts from DBZ, and then they did this thing where they made their villains not villains. And that was gross and weird the one time that J.K. Rowling did it. Doing it 6 times did not improve the concept. So that, of course, all caused Naruto to drop way off the map.
And finally, we have One Piece. The show that takes like 6 chapters, and instead of turning that into 1 episode like most people, turns that into like 60. I mean, for example, just the pacing in general in the show is miserable. Like this clock tower, if you've ever seen One Piece, you know there's like a whole like 10-minute segment in the world time where they have to like find a bomb before it goes off. 10 minutes literally takes like 15 episodes. It's like that's not how time works. This snail is faster than One Piece. But
hey, it's how time works if you're on Namek.
Yeah, but this is supposed to be on like Earth or something. I don't even know. And second of all, when I think pirates and ships, and I think water and naval battles, but you know what I get in One Piece? This. Everything takes place on islands. There's like no naval battles at all. It's just like what is even the point? And then the aesthetic, the choice of pirates, they literally just said what hadn't been taken. Oh, Naruto's got ninjas. They already got like kung fu tournaments. Sure, ninjas, because samurais are boring. Well, okay, fine. The pirates are kind of cool. But what's another thing that's like core to pirates? Treasure. And you know what One Piece doesn't have? Treasure. I've watched 900 episodes, and I've seen treasure like twice. That doesn't make sense. That's a very poor treasured episode ratio, if you ask me. So all of these factors really put a dent in One Piece's popularity. Ooh.
And that's the big 3. That's the mega arc shows.
Hold the phone, Max. Are we seriously going to go past this section without giving me an anime to talk about?
Yes.
I think that's not fair.
But Clayton, if you want, we'll let you talk about anything that's not an anime.
No. See, Max, I think it's time for justice to be done. We have had a lot of our fans come to us before or after our panels and say, hey guys, why do you never talk about Fairy Tail? You know, Fairy Tail is an anime, right? And people watch it, supposedly. And, you know, its fans, like, are tired of being tread on as if they don't matter. So here I am to set the record straight and give Fairy Tail the attention and respect it deserves. Which is to say that Fairy Tail is a piece of garbage anime, and if you like it, you're a piece of garbage human being. It is so unpopular that it is wrapped all the way past infinity, has gone back down the number line backwards, and we're down at like negative 63. Right? This is past like 2 infinities worth of numbers here. Like this anime is like nobody likes it. That's why we don't talk about it. You know, at best it was negative 62. Then it got dropped off again. Then in 1 year, like Shonen Jump forgot it existed and forgot to rank it because nobody liked it. Right. And then, you know, the following year, they realized their mistake, started ranking it again, and then it just dropped back off the map. And, you know, there's not really much else to say. It's garbage. And yeah, it's trash.
So As you can tell, as we've gone over, shonen anime got really bad in the 2010s. So at that point, it kind of just did the same thing that anime in general did. Because, in the 2000s, whenever anime invented all of these new terrible genres. And then once we got into the 2010s, shonen just kind of gave up and made its own new subgenres and broke up into terrible modern anime. Just the worst.
The first of these new shonen subgenres is going to be sports anime, right? Which, on one sense, it's fine, right? Because sports anime is at least action-oriented, unlike Death Note. But the problem is, anime was the cultural refuge of social rejects who were muscled out of the hierarchy in high school by all the jocks because they weren't good at sports. Now that sports is an anime, not even anime is safe, and now it's going to be even harder for you to get a girlfriend. And this is best exemplified by Free. I mean, look at these bodies, right? These are not high school bodies. These are Olympic swimmers on steroids. This is not okay. This is where body shaming comes from. Now, the one thing I will say about Free, in its defense, is that it didn't really impact the dating pool that much, because while it's true that a lot of girls watch this anime and realize, hey, I'm actually really into guys that look like that, and left the dating market, it also took a bunch of guys who realized, hey, I'm really into guys who look like that, and took them off the dating market too. So in the end, it ended up having a net neutral effect, so it's not the worst offender. Unlike that one basketball anime that my roommates were really into back in 2013, I don't know, it's just more body shaming, and most egregiously, it features magical transformations right before the characters are going to do something super mundane like dunking. Which is not okay, because magical transformations are for when you're about to charge up a literal planet-busting laser, like in Dragon Ball Z. You gotta know when to apply the trope, and sports basketball anime just absolutely fails at this. At the very least, there is one subgenre of sports anime which is okay, which is boxing anime, because it features punching.
All right. Well, then another instance of terrible modern anime is, of course, the isekais. It's the genre where somebody dies and they go to another world, or they get sucked into a video game. A subgenre of this, is just the video game world, where they go in, they get trapped in this video game, and they have to, if they die in the game, they die in real life. It's just so lazy, and it's like I'm watching an anime escape, and now I'm watching somebody else participate in escapism. It's like watching somebody else play a video game. Nobody does that. Just ignore it. And then the worst part is they can't even try to pretend that these worlds are real in their fake canon. They acknowledge they're fake to even exist in their fake worlds. At least double down and just call it a fantasy anime. But no, it's like, oh, this fake world, now we're getting transported into it. And they all have the same plot. They all start out with an otaku loser who can't meet a person at all. And then all of a sudden he's reborn, he's got amazing stat block, and ladies can't keep their hands off of him. And then the weirdest part is they're all named Kirito. We got Kirito from Sword Art Online, Kirito from Ragnarok, Kirito from Goblin Slayer, and Kirito from that one time I was reincarnated as a Kirito. But I will admit, they did give us one important thing to the genre, and it's not these. It's the character who created these. I'm, of course, talking about Truck-kun, the maker of heroes, the one who sends isekais their heroes. But luckily, all the authors decided not to focus on Truck-kun and focus on the loser protagonist instead, so they didn't have a chance to ruin Truck-kun's character development.
Next, we have the not-so-special snowflake protagonist. These characters are defined by their initial mediocrity. In a world where everyone can do magic, I cannot. In a world where your societal value is determined by the size of your monobar, I have an almost non-existent monobar. In a world where everyone is born with a superpower, my superpower is to have a pinky toe. Now, and then, of course, it turns out that their mediocrity somehow makes them double extra special. Okay, my inability to cast magic is actually a superpower that gives me 11 million defense against mages and 11 million attack against mages. My mana bar might be nearly 0, but I have the highest magic attack ever. I might not have the coolest power, but my daddy says the best superhero ever says that I'm the realest hero. Okay. And the problem with this is that it creates a poisonous thinking, an unrealistic expectation, because weeaboos have an obsession with thinking that they are somehow special despite their mediocrity. Like, if I go out and try to accomplish my dreams, I will somehow accomplish them. Next slide. It's not the society is, it's not me that's wrong. It's society that has a problem. If my sugar daddy just writes me into his will, everything will be fine for me. Okay? And this is a fantasy. Okay? You will never accomplish your dreams. Society is correct to label you mediocre, and you don't even have a sugar daddy.
The final subgenre of shonen we really have to go over at this point is the it has a child version, which is basically the equivalent of making an entire show where your character just died in D&D and you scribbled Junior at the end of the character sheet so you could keep going, which is lazy. Come up with a new character. You can play someone else. I've rolled entirely new characters in the middle of campaigns after my life partner Bonesaw, the professional wrestler, died in a zombie apocalypse. Anyway, it has a child. This is where you get, this is your Dragon Ball GTs, your Naruto's kids, your whatever the new Inuyasha reboot is, your Trump 2024s. Just reboots nobody asked for shows that already way overstayed their welcome and were generally not well received even when they started. So just stop. Can we I don't know, get some new ideas? Any new ideas, especially for that that fourth one? Please get him off of my screen. I'm scared. He's gonna shoot us like a rhino.
I've got an idea, and that is, of course, the real reason why anime is bad. It has nothing to do with bad genres or bad writing or bad character development or even the abandonment of tournament arcs, as shocking as that may seem. Jackie Chan Adventures didn't have a tournament arc, and it turned out fine. See, the real reason anime is bad is because Crunchyroll killed Harambe. That's right. See, anime normally goes in cycles. It's good, it's bad. It's good, it's bad. There's a little bit in between, and it's just an iron law of nature. The previous peak was during Jackie Chan Adventures back in the 90s. Couldn't do any better than that. Was literally impossible. So it started declining. And, that's okay, because it was going to go back up again. But the problem is the recent trough was supposed to have passed already. See, Harambe was supposed to discover a Dragon Ball Z box set in his cage, binge watch the entire thing in a weekend, undergo an apotheosis to become the Golden Uzuru, and discover how not to do a Dragon Ball reboot series so we can bring Shonen back to its former glory. And see, the problem is Crunchyroll didn't want that to happen because that means they would have to try. So they had him assassinated. The kid was a plant. They hired a gunman, put 2 and 2 together, click, boom, Harambe's dead. And now we're stuck with Dragon Ball Super, and everything's just bad now.
So now that we've gotten here, we all can agree anime is trash. But is there any going back? Is there getting better? The answer? No. We gave Max the receipt. We knew he was bad with it, but we gave it to him anyways.
I think I blew my nose with it, honestly. I'm sorry, guys.
Just to put this in perspective, imagine this black hole is the anime industry. All that yellow is the farther out from the middle you are, the better you are. So as you get closer, as we started falling into the middle, we could have used the slingshot technique with the Golden Uzuru to get back into the good part. But no, we went smack dab into the middle. And once we're in there, there's no getting out. We're done. But we have a couple pieces of advice for you to try to make things livable. Because we do, unfortunately, have to live with each other. First off, take a shower. I can't smell you right now, but I know if we're doing an in-person con, I could. So, and also the fact you haven't left your house in 3 months means you probably haven't showered in 3 months. So please, shower. It's for the best. Just do it every day, please. We beg of you. Second, Take those waifus and put them where they belong. Yes, the trash. All of your Namis, your Nicolas Cages, they all have to go in the same place for the healing to start. Third, please never do this ever. I don't want to see this image again. I have to see it every time we do this panel. It scars me again. Just stop.
Now, we're going to respond to our critics, which is really easy to do for a previously recorded panel, because that means that if any of you have an issue with what we're saying, sucks to be you. But if you are so compelled to find us on Twitter at 5thgen, not PKMN, to tweet at us, please remember these things before doing so. First of all, don't, like, criticism hurts our feelings. We're millennials. We don't take that well. So just only say nice things. Talk about how much you loved I don't know, Sam's bit on Naruto. Don't talk about how historically inaccurate we are when we count Ranma 1/2 as a 90s anime. That'll just make us sad. Point 2. Are we serious? Of course we are. I brought Sam on board just so then we'd have someone named Sam so I could make a serious Sam joke. Like, everything we're talking about here is legitimate.
I'm extremely serious.
Modern anime is garbage. One Piece is trash. 90s anime is the peak of culture. And Scooby-Doo is the first shonen. Like, right, everybody? This is all true.
Just go try to relive the glory days.
Objective facts.
Objective.
Watch
very
Jackie Chan
serious
Adventures.
About all of these things.
And with that, we would like to thank all of you for enjoying this panel. Enjoy KinYoobiCon, and have a great day.